Today we have Jessica Trites-Raleigh. She is our presenter for Potatoes Today. She's the Vice President of Policy and Data Quality here at National Crop Insurance Services. Her responsibilities is that she's a reviewer, interpreter, and subject matter expert for the federal, which is the MPCI, and crop hail data processing to ensure policy and procedure are accurate. She also reviews and comments on draft policy and procedure, actuarial, and processing documentation, and is a member of the Farm Bill and expert review teams. Jessica leads the Technology and Information Processing Committee and participates in industry and member training and education. Her background is that Jessica started working in crop insurance part-time back in 1994 at a small regional company, eventually working at 4 companies in almost every aspect of the industry, including underwriting, claims, analysis, private product development, and state insurance department filing and training. She joined NCIS in 2013 with an IT and data processing systems focus before moving into her current role. Additionally, Jessica is the Ag Gateway Precision Ag Council Chair and Communications Working Group Chair. She's also a member of Women in Agribusiness. Favorite thing about crop insurance is helping farmers keep farming and supporting farmers' service providers. As a rural Minnesota turkey farm kid, her crop insurance career keeps her connected to her farm community roots. Also, variety keeps her interested. In a single day, she can work with the federal government on procedure and policy, private industry on rating and data processing, associations on data exchange standards, and colleagues on training, audits, and web content. Her interests involve baking cookies. She hopes to bake and decorate custom cookies for money one day, supporting farmers through baking supply purchases. Until then, she bakes and decorates for holidays and shares the edible love through the mail. So I will turn it over to Jessica. She will get started on the potato webinar.
Thank you, Molly. Today we're going to talk about potatoes in Pennsylvania. As Molly mentioned, I am a turkey farm kid from the state of Minnesota, and in Minnesota we also have a proliferation of potato fields. So I'm familiar with the crop, with gleaning. My brother drives a potato truck in the fall as a little side gig, and those fields are filled every spring with trucks planting, every fall with trucks harvesting, and diggers out there pulling up those potatoes and storing them eventually to ship off for chippers and fries primarily, some bakers. So let's dig in. Our focus today is the Northern Potato Crop Insurance Coverage Policy, and that's available in a variety of counties in Pennsylvania. It's under the actual production history plan of insurance, and that's based off your production history. The webinar builds on the crop insurance basics presentation, which discussed the common crop insurance basic provisions. And today we're going to go through federal crop insurance structure, a little bit about the key basic provision tenets and forms. We'll talk about where coverage is available, review types and practices, insured, and the policy provisions and options available. And we'll talk about documents and your duties when a loss occurs. So let's start in with relationships. These are the relationships that make up the federal crop insurance program. First off, we have the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, and their role is to establish new and revised commodity crop insurance programs. They hear from private submitters. They have the FCIC Board of Directors that sits in Washington, D.C., or meets in Washington, D.C. with members from all across the nation, farmers and agents and commodity folks. And they oversee programs and rules and regs. The flip side of that is the risk management agency, and that's the organization that really administers the overall program. They manage the FCIC and administer actuarial data, premium discounts, provide support and outreach. The next piece in the working together is AIPs. These are the approved insurance providers. They have an agreement with the risk management agency to sell and service the federal crop insurance policies. Each of these also does sell private products that are administered through approval by the state insurance departments. But today we're going to focus on their role as a key piece of the federal program. They work with private licensed agents, and the agent is really your key contact. They provide product and premium information to you. They're going to collect information from you by the appropriate deadlines, make sure they keep you on track to keep your insurance strong. They will build good relationships with you and help you understand what it is that might best benefit you. Ultimately, though, it is your choice, and you are the key, the linchpin in the relationship. The farmer has the ownership in the crop. You enter into the crop insurance policy or contract to insure it. You report your information. You pay applicable premiums and fees, follow the good farming practices, and ultimately, if you have a loss, then based on the criteria in the policy, very likely you will receive an indemnity payment to keep you farming in the future. So how do you buy a policy? And first step is we need to make sure you have an agent. So you'll see on the slide here that the Risk Management Agency's website has at the very top an option for Find an Agent. That's the easiest place to go. If you click that, you're going to see the screen that's on right now, and you'll see RMA Agent Locator highlighted and the little arrow pointing toward it. If you click that, you're going to get a screen like this. And this screen is going to let you search for an agent by distance, by crop, by name, etc. Now let's dive in to some basic provision reminders. As I mentioned, the crop insurance basics was discussed on January 8th, and that recording is available to all of you. No cost, just like this one. So I would really encourage you, if you did not watch that webinar yet, to go to that and then maybe come back to this webinar and any other crop-specific webinars that might help you with your operation. Here's where you can find that webinar. And please stay tuned because we do have additional webinars upcoming. Important from those basic provisions is the person type. This is you. So on the application, you need to report your person type along with the correct identification number for you. Person type is essentially the entity that you operate as for your sales and marketing. So for example, you can see some possible person types on the screen. If you sell as an individual and you're married, you insure as an individual spousal person type. If you do business as a partnership with an EIN, then you're going to insure under a partnership name and report the EIN that accompanies that partnership. Now, as long as you stay within the guidelines of your crop insurance program, it is helpful if you're able to insure as the same type of entity and same tax ID as you use for other government programs in, for example, programs that might be under the Farm Service Agency. Also on this slide, you will see the most commonly listed person types. As I mentioned before, you've got individual, individual spousal, partnership, and corporation. you do need to have a social security number or the appropriate employer identification number also listed clearly on your application. You'll want to be very certain that those are correct. That can affect your insurance later if it is found that your ID number was inaccurate. Next, and related to the person type, so here's you're the applicant. Now we have people who have a share in you as the insured person of at least 10%. If you insure as with your spouse, spouses are presumed to have an SBI of 50%. So you're a 50-50 share in your operation. Also, if your person type would normally include an SBI, so a spousal would, a partnership would, a trust, a corporation, there are many that should have a substantial beneficial interest individual or entity listed. If you don't report that, then your application may not be accepted, or if it's found later that you should have included that, your insurance may be invalidated. Conservation compliance. This is a crossover with the Farm Service Agency, and this originated again, came back for linkage purposes in the 2014 Farm Bill. Farmers need to have a form called the AD 1026 form in place with the Farm Service Agency to show they're complying with the highly erodible land conservation and wetland conservation provisions. This affects whether or not you get a premium discount from the USDA. You can see some of the key items and the key deadlines on the screen there, but let's talk a little bit about why it is important to do this. It's important to check your status because you may not be eligible for premium discount if you don't have that form. You're not eligible if you're not eligible, then you're going to be responsible for the entire premium, so the gross total premium. When we go through our example calculations later, you'll see what that difference would be. Now, because this is first and foremost an FSA program, it is ultimately your responsibility as the producer to find out your status. You can talk to your crop insurance agent. They can check via the crop insurance processing system provided by their AIP, or even better, talk with your local FSA county office. Now we're going to start digging into some of the areas that are very key to our crop today, potatoes. Basic units and optional units. A basic unit is one that you are automatically going to qualify for, unless otherwise specified in the crop provisions or special provisions. This is all the insurable acreage of the insured crop in the county on the date coverage begins for the crop year in which you have either 100% share in the crop on those acres. So maybe your full cash rent, maybe you own the land flat out, that's your 100% share. And then if there is less than 100% for you on that given land, then that shared with person A is another potential basic unit. Shared with person B is another potential basic unit. It doesn't matter the share percentage. What matters is the person. You will have a premium discount available to you for potatoes for basic unit structure. It's a 10% discount. And the catastrophic endorsement, which covers at a truly a catastrophic level, so a 50% level of your risk, allows only a basic unit structure. Optional units. Optional units are allowed by section and section equivalent or by FSA farm number. And depending on the crop and the special provisions, you might be able to subdivide by irrigation practice. Although the optional unit structure is going to require you a higher premium, it does allow for losses to be paid on a more granular level than basic units. because there's a smaller land area involved and you're determining damage based on that smaller area. And that will stand alone. So qualifying for optional units, you can see here on the screen, you need acceptable production reports to show that you're keeping production separate. You need to plant the crop so that you have clear and discernible breaks in the planting pattern at the boundaries of each optional unit. And you're going to need to provide acceptable production evidence for the most recent crop year of planted acreage and production. Important, and this goes for everything that we talk about today, is to discuss the requirements, the record keeping, pros and cons with your crop insurance agent. Our crop today does allow for organic coverage, so we need to talk about a few of the basics here. Crop insurance is provided for organic farming practices in the actuarial documents, and for potatoes, that is available in all of the counties that have potato insurance available. They're certified, transitioning or converting over to certified coverage, and buffer zone organic coverage. And a written organic certificate does need to be in effect from a certifying agency that indicates that you have met the criteria for organic practice. Few additional pieces on price for organic practices. The contracting price might be available, and it is for potatoes. And if organic pricing is not available via the crop and special provisions, you can choose what's called a contract price addendum. It's an available add-on with your particular crop. For potatoes, yes, they offer organic certified and transitional, and as well as conventional types. Written agreements. Written agreements are also available to you, and these allow you to add coverage in a county that may not have the particular coverage and rates that you're looking for, based on certain conditions, and there are a lot of criteria, a lot of details, and there's a webinar for that. So I would encourage you, again, to go find the written agreement webinar recording to learn a little bit more about written agreements and the process, and then work with your agent to talk through what might work best for you. If you're in a county that we don't talk about today for potatoes and you want to insure them, there may be a way to do that. Please don't count it out. Now, paperwork, always so much fun for everyone. You are required to file certain paperwork with your agent by set deadlines, and we need to highlight a few requirements for the application, for production reporting, and for acreage reporting. So let's look at the application first. The application needs to be completed by the earliest sales closing date for all of the crops on your app. Now, the sales closing date for potatoes is March 15th, coming up very, very soon. If your app is late, then that's going to be rejected by your insurance provider. They are not able to accept that. Coverage is continuous and can be canceled the following year. You can't cancel that first crop year that you write an application. It's automatically going to renew. You can change coverages the following year before the next sales closing date. And your application is going to include things like your name, your address, tax ID, your SBIs, which we talked about, along with your selected plan of insurance, your county, crops, coverage level, your price, optional endorsements that you want on each crop, and more. You need to plan to spend some time with your agent to really understand your options and then to complete the form. One missed box can have a big impact on your coverage. If you produce crops in 2 different counties, you can choose to insure one county but not the other. Different coverages can be selected in each county. Remember, you do have to insure all of the acres of your crop in a given county in which you have a share. So whereas you can choose not to insure an entire county, you can't choose for this crop, you can't choose to insure only a portion of the acreage in the county. And one key note, apply for all the crops that you might plant. You're only going to pay premium for the crops that you do plant. And if you don't put a crop on your application and then do plant that crop, you will not have insurance for that specific crop. Production reporting is next. That's going to happen by the earlier of the acreage report or 45 days after your sales closing date. What you're going to be doing at that time is reporting your production from the previous crop year. At some point in the future, that may change to where you'll report right at the very end of an entire crop cycle. Your agent will probably be happy to take your documentation and work with you to begin your production reporting process early. But what's on our slide here is the deadline for reporting to your insurance provider and the risk management agency. Now, the measurements of farm stored production are also acceptable for certain crops. For potatoes, that's not so much of a factor, other than if you're placing them in a commercial storage location, that may have a measurement opportunity, but more likely you'll have records from the loads that are going out of your fields and being delivered to your end receiver. You'll need complete records of planting, replanting, inputs, production, harvesting, and disposition of the insured crop on each unit. It needs to be, all of that should be retained at least 3 years after the end of a given crop year. Want to make sure you have that in hand. That's the record retention period that's going to help you out best with your crop insurance policy. And lastly, if you choose, we'll talk about this later, the certified seed potato endorsement. That's going to require you to provide some additional information up front, a production and acreage records for 3 previous years, and you need to show certification documentation for the program. So that's a little something different for potatoes. And finally, acreage reports. Acreage reports are by location and unit, and you're going to turn in planted and prevented from planted acreage, both insurable and uninsurable. You're going to report by the acreage reporting date. That's in the actuarial documents, and for potatoes, that is July 15th. And if you choose, here's another endorsement, a processing quality endorsement, you will also need to turn in a processor contract by the acreage reporting date. All of this information from the acreage report is used by the insurance provider to establish your amount of coverage or liability and your premium for the crop. Now let's talk a little more in detail about our actual production history plan of insurance and a few key potato crop provision policy definitions. What's APH? Well, it's actually the oldest still active federal crop insurance plan of insurance. It's going to protect you against a yield loss due to naturally occurring events. You're going to choose a coverage level from among several coverage levels. We'll look at those in more detail in a few slides. You're going to use your history. So this is, you might have heard of area protection plans. So those are based on a county averaging, county historical data. This potato policy and all the endorsements are based on your history. What have you produced? Your production guarantee, very simply, is your approved APH yield times the coverage level you choose. So that coverage level is creating a little bit of a deductible in your production guarantee. An indemnity might be due if your harvested production plus any appraised production is less than that guarantee. It's that simple. Now we need some definitions. So we already mentioned that it's possible you might have a contract if you choose the quality processing endorsement. And this production guarantee crop is measured in hundredweight. Here's some key definitions for us. First, we start with those from the crop provisions. And buyer, what's a buyer? For the potato crop provision, that is a business entity that buys or processes potatoes, possesses all licenses and permits required in Pennsylvania, and has facilities to accept the potatoes that are purchased. Certified seed are potatoes that are entered into a potato certified seed program and meet all the requirements for the production to be used to produce a seed crop for that next year, or a potato crop for harvest for commercial uses in the next crop year. Grade inspection. That's an inspection where samples of production are obtained by the crop insurance company or a third party that the company chooses before sale, storage, or disposal of any of your lot or a portion of the lot of potatoes. The potatoes are evaluated and their quality graded. The determinations are made by the company or by a lab approved by the company or by a licensed potato grader who's certified in Pennsylvania or by the USDA. Potato deficiency determination is going to be based on the potato type or the end use using the standards set by U.S. standards bodies. The quality and number of samples required is determined in accordance with the procedures issued by the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Local market is simply the area in which your insured potatoes are normally sold. And that potato certified seed program is a state program administered by a public agency responsible for seed certification processes in Pennsylvania. Finally, tuber rot. This is an unfortunate situation that can occur with potatoes, soft, mushy, or a leaky condition of the potato tissue, a soft rot or a wet breakdown that's defined in the U.S. standards and grades for potatoes. Tuber rot includes, but isn't limited to, a breakdown caused by southern bacterial wilt, ring rot, or late blight. And it is a messy thing if you've ever had potatoes go bad on you. Now we need to talk about a few definitions from the process and quality endorsement on the off chance that you might choose that. Processing quality endorsement has definitions of broker, processor, and processor contract. And a broker is a business that's regularly engaged in buying and selling processing potatoes that possesses all the licenses and permits required by Pennsylvania. And where required, the broker has necessary facilities with enough equipment to accept and transfer your processing potatoes to the processor within a reasonable amount of time after harvest or after a typical storage period. The processor is a business enterprise that's regularly engaged in processing potatoes for human consumption. Chips, fries, think of things like that. This processor needs to possess all licenses and permits for processing potatoes in the state of Pennsylvania and has facilities or has contractual access to those facilities with enough equipment to accept and process potatoes grown under a processing contract within a reasonable amount of time after harvest or a typical storage period. So you're starting to see a pattern with the processing angle of potato production. Processor contract then is a written agreement between the producer and the processor, or potentially between the producer and a broker, containing at a minimum the producer's commitment to plant and grow the processing potatoes and deliver the potato production to a processor or broker, the processor or broker's commitment to purchase all of the production stated in the contract, and a price or pricing mechanism to determine the value of that delivered production. And now we dig into the meat of it. Northern potatoes. And so, hey Jess, why is it northern potatoes? That is the policy issued by the FCIC. So northern potatoes and southern potatoes, they are split and each have their own policy. The northern potatoes have a significant additional number of optional endorsements that we'll be talking about, and those actually make the northern potato policy slightly more complex, but also give it an edge as far as additional options for you as the producer for covering whatever your risk might be with your potato crop and production. First, some stats. Not a lot of policies. 49 policies sold, 6.8 million in liability, 3,344 acres planted, 1.1 million in total premium, and 130,000 plus in indemnity. Now, the total premium that is shown on this slide, that's the gross calculated premium amount before subtracting out the premium support or discount that's offered by the risk management agency. So let's talk about the insured crop. We already mentioned that this is a hundredweight crop. It's an APH plan production guarantee. The information on this slide really doesn't cover the specific inclusions or exclusions under the available optional northern potato endorsements, but it does give you a good idea of what's insured. As mentioned previously, you need to cover all of the potatoes in the county for which a rate is available and in which you have a share. You're going to need to plant using certified potato seed, planted for harvest as certified seed stock or for human consumption. What's not insured are potatoes that are interplanted with another crop, fingerling type unless you have a written agreement for that, and potatoes grown on acreage where potatoes were planted each of the 4 previous crop years, so a rotation requirement. Also important to point out, I'm going to give you a few facts from the special provisions concerning northern potatoes. Only production to count determined under the terms of the northern potato crop provisions and storage provisions is used for APH purposes. So that's a little factor for your insurance coverage. And then if we look also at availability, insurance is not going to attach, as mentioned, to those acres where a crop was produced in the 4 previous crop years, and also insurance will not attach to any acreage that is interplanted unless allowed by the special provisions. So interplanted into a grass or legume is what we're speaking of there. What's our insurance period? It's going to start very simply when the crop is planted. And it's going to end when you harvest, have total destruction of the crop, abandon the crop, have a final loss adjustment, or on Halloween. What are the counties? We mentioned earlier that a written agreement could be implemented potentially if you are not producing potatoes in one of the counties listed here. The counties are on your screen. We'll let you read those. For types, there are no specific types mentioned for potatoes in Pennsylvania. So it's an open type. And for practices, there is no differentiated between irrigated or non-irrigated. There is simply a conventional practice, an organic certified, and an organic transitional. Now we need to talk about pricing. All these prices are the price per hundredweight, and they may be under an agreement with a contract if grown as organic or if grown for processing. One important point, and I'm going to pull this out of the provisions, the crop provisions, as you're reading through the prices on the screen here. The crop provisions are very clear that if production from any acreage, and this deals with your loss side, but any acreage of the insured crop is not harvested, then you see the slide with the prices. In that situation where you have unharvested production, the price used to determine your loss is 90% of whatever your price election is. So it's going to reduce your price election a little bit when you're looking at the prices here. That requirement, however, is not applicable to the certified seed endorsement price election. So that little $1 additional price election for certified seed, that will stay $1. Next up are coverage levels and the premium discount we've been talking about. The coverage level modifies your 100% production guarantee. So that's as determined based on your actual production history and any modifiers. So we take that percentage, that APH, and if say we chose an 80%, say we have 80% coverage level that we have elected at sales closing date. That means you have the equivalent of a 20% deductible from your 100% APH. So it's a reduction in the approved history based on your records. There is no premium for CAT policies, so the catastrophic level coverage is fixed at 50% of your average yield and 55% of the price election. The cost for catastrophic coverage is just an administrative fee of $300. However, when the new Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, is in effect, then the catastrophic fee will increase per crop per county to $655. That's not in effect now, but it will come in some point in the future. The bottom row here and the middle row, we need to talk a little bit about. So we covered coverage level. Now let's talk about that premium discount and your premium share. So we said earlier we were going to choose an 80% coverage level for our potatoes. Our premium discount at that coverage level is 48%. That means your share of the gross or total calculated premium is going to be 52%. So what you'll end up doing is you will have a difference, a discounted amount of 48% of that gross is going to be taken off your premium bill. You will pay 52% of that total. If you're down at the 65% level, you'd pay 41% of the total. We already covered a little bit our unit structures. This just quickly reviews for you what is allowed and puts it in very simple terms. Basic unit, again, is that owner-operator 100%. And then anything that you're sharing with some other person, person A, potential basic unit, person B, potential basic unit. Optional units subdivide those basic units down to a smaller, more granular level. Those are sections, section equivalents, or by farm number, FSA farm number. Our next item is coverage, common coverage elements. These are some items that you usually will find in any given crop policy. Replanting, you can see here, is excluded from the northern potato policy. There are no paid replanting reimbursements under this policy. There is, however, a late planting period, and we'll look at our dates here in just a bit. We have a chart. And there is a prevented from planting option. The prevented from planting option also includes an optional increase of coverage of 5% to bump up your PP, or prevent plant, guarantee. Under the current actuarial documents for Pennsylvania potatoes, the prevented planting coverage is 45% of your guarantee. And if you choose that additional 5% option, then that would bring you up to 50%. Here's where we start digging into our options and endorsements, and oh my, you can see for northern potatoes in Pennsylvania, there are many options, many endorsements for you to select from. In our option, let me back up. One quick note, all these listed options and endorsements, this is pretty important. All of these have to be elected on your application by the sales closing date. Each one of these, if you choose it on your application, is continuous, meaning that it's going to roll forward and apply the following crop year unless you cancel that option or endorsement by the upcoming cancellation date. Also, because all options and endorsements amend the coverage that's provided in your basic provisions and crop provisions, the requirements you must follow are different. The loss procedures and time frame can change based on the endorsement. Please be sure that you read over and discuss these endorsements and options in detail with your agent. It's really important that you do that and understand exactly what you're purchasing and what it will do in altering your coverage. Now, let's get to the fun. So we have a contract pricing. We mentioned that briefly when we talked about organic, that there was a contract pricing option. There's also an exclusion of hail and fire. That'll reduce your premium a little bit because you're excluding a few perils. There is that prevented planting increase to bump up your prevented from planting acreage guarantee a little bit. There's a yield adjustment option that kind of cuts off any really catastrophic years in your APH history databases. There's a yield cupping that does a similar function, slightly different, but your agent can help you understand the difference in which one you should choose, or both. And there is a yield exclusion where you can completely throw out a very catastrophic year based on the year being listed in the actuarial documents. So it has to be a listed year for your crop, your county, in the actuarial documents for the current crop year. If it's listed, you can exclude it from your database to hopefully improve your production history. Now that one you can see is only available in 5 different counties. Let's go to the endorsements. The endorsements are a quality option, a processing quality option, which we have mentioned requires a contract, a certified seed option, a storage option, and supplemental coverage option, which covers way up at the top, kind of that top portion that is your deductible portion. And that SEO option is only available for potatoes in Potter County, Pennsylvania. Very quickly, a few different notes about rating impacts for these different options and endorsements. This will vary by county, so you will want to look at the actuarial documents by county, and those are available on RMA's website, and your agent can take you through those as well. For the options, there really is not too much change, pretty much no impact to your premium rate based on the options, except for the yield adjustment does have a slight increase to your total premium rate. The prevented planting 5% increase does also increase your premium rate. And the hail and fire exclusion, because you are removing 2 perils from your federal crop insurance policy, reduces your premium rate. Endorsements. Now these, as I mentioned, very important. These rates vary by county. Each one of them will increase your premium because it is adding an entire new set of coverage. So because of that, these will bump up what you're, and we're going to see an example of that. I'm going to do a certified seed example so you can see the certified seed additional premium amount when we get to our calculations. First, I think it's important, because there are so many endorsements, for us to go through the potato-specific endorsements. So for the potato quality endorsement, this is, again, elect by sales closing date. It applies to all insured potato acreage except those grown for seed. It's going to provide quality protection for production with internal defects that can't be sorted from undamaged production. So that's an important factor. You can't separate it out. It also covers some external defects. And here are some of the key points. In Pennsylvania, there's only, you'll see in crop provisions that there may be an option for US number 1 or number 2 or better grade standards. For Pennsylvania, the only option, as we saw, I'm going to whip back here. See on this slide, we see quality option number 2. That's indicating that we're only dealing with the number 2 or better grade standards. Coverage on acreage for the production of seed is excluded, and production harvested or appraised by an insurance company adjuster before reaching full maturity that doesn't meet the grade standards solely because of size is considered to have met the grade. There's a few additional items within the special provisions that are specific to the quality endorsement. And one of those that I would like to point out here is that there are some additional quality items. I didn't include them, but you'll want to take a look at those special provisions for quality charts that show you how percentage factors are calculated. That's an element of the quality endorsement, as well as the processing quality endorsement. And it shows you a default percentage for fresh and processing number 2 and better. It also discusses grade inspection requirements. Your processing quality endorsement is elected by sales closing date and applies to all of the potato acres under a processor contract. This is different. Recall on the last slide, we said it applied to all the acres except for seed, but everything else gets sucked up by the quality endorsement. The processing quality endorsement, when you do your acreage report with your agent, you will be identifying which acres are under the processor contract and are grown for processing. This endorsement will not apply to any of the other acres of potatoes. This processing quality endorsement covers additional quality protection for unacceptable levels of specific gravity, sugar ends, and poor fry or chip color. Now, if you've been producing potatoes for a while and you're producing them for processing, my guess is you know what all of those are. Very quickly though, specific gravity is a quality criteria for potatoes used to estimate the amount of solids or dry matter content in those potatoes. If you've got a high dry matter content, then you've got a lower water content. Makes sense, right? And because of that, you're going to have less oil absorption. You're going to have a lighter, fluffier French fry, for example. You'll have less greasy potato chips, all good things that processors really want to have. The sugar ends, that's a defect in the product quality. It's a disorder that occurs in potatoes sometimes, and it's often referred to as dark ends or jelly ends or translucent or glassy. And it comes from relatively low starches and too high of sugar, so an imbalance in the potato. And then we're dealing with poor fry color. That's coming from color changes that can occur in potatoes during the frying process. Some details on the processing endorsement. That attaches to and amends the quality endorsement. And the quality endorsement attaches to and amends the potato crop provisions. So you have a chain of requirements here. So if you want the processing quality endorsement, you must also have the base quality endorsement provision. You need to have a contract. We talked a little bit about that. You need to make sure that your potato acreage that you have good records, because it could be revised based on what's in your contract, so how your contract is set up. And there's information with some details in the processing quality endorsement to talk through that. Really encourage you to read that if this is of interest to you. It also uses damaged crop value comparison to a maximum price selection. And then any appraised or harvested production is adjusted in proportion to the crop's value of the federal crop insurance price. Certified seed is the endorsement that we're going to use in a few of our examples as well today. Also elected by sales closing date, and also something that you're going to identify specific acreages under the certified seed program at acreage reporting date. Covers a loss of production and a loss of your certification. So you do, certified seed is limited to no more than 125% of the average number of acres entered into and passing state certification during the 3 previous years, unless you've got a written agreement that allows more acreage to be insured. So it's that limitation. Rotation requirements are very, very specific for this crop. You need to be sure that you're following the requirements in the policy. And any additional value of production applies to seed producers with acreage within state-sanctioned seed management areas and isolation districts. And finally, our storage coverage option. This endorsement is also by sales closing date election, and it applies to all your potato acres except, and there's a couple of except potatoes grown for seed, or potatoes grown under contract that requires a production delivery within 3 days of harvest. So obviously that contract is not saying you're going to put them in storage. So it makes sense that those potatoes would not be covered by a storage endorsement. With this endorsement, it's going to extend your discovery period for damage. So that's the real crux of what this does. It is covering that additional discovery period if the damage results in tuber rot, certain internal defects, and unacceptable specific gravity, sugar ends, or poor fry or chip color. Recall those from our processing conversation. Finally, our very important deadlines and dates. You can see on the screen here, I'm not going to read through these. One I'll point out though is that there is a late planting period. You can see the end of late planting period here. And you can also see contract turn in at acreage reporting date if required. Let's do a few examples. The calculations that follow are based on northern potato crop provisions with liability and premium examples that include certified seed endorsement. So our first one is the guarantee. You can see that's a fairly straightforward calculation. It's your approved APH yield per acre times the coverage level. Here's a quick example. If you had 260 hundredweight approved APH yield per acre, 75% coverage level, you would have a 195% or 195 hundredweight per acre guarantee. And if you wanted the total guarantee, you just multiply in the acres. Liability. Here we're taking a per acre production guarantee, the crop acreage, the price, and your share. Coming up with a pretty simple basic calculation. Guarantee times acres times price times share. Here's our example criteria. And we're going to take that and say, here's our 195 per acre guarantee, and our 160 acres comes up to a 31,200 hundredweight total guarantee. Take that total guarantee times our price of $12.85, and we get a $400,920 base value of the guarantee. We also have to calculate, we see up in our criteria, we have a $1 certified seed endorsement price. We have to calculate that out as well. So we're going to come up with a $31,200 certified seed value. And finally, we add the two together, get our total value of the guarantee, and multiply that times our share. And we get a liability of $432,120. And premium. As we discussed, RMA does set the premium rates, and they publish those in the actuarial documents. The premium rate that's used for your premium calculation is the published rate minus any discounts. So remember, we mentioned that 10% basic unit discount if that's your unit structure, and plus any rate surcharges, so options and endorsements with additional rates. Here's our elements: liability, final premium rate with any discounts or surcharges considered, and premium discount percent offered by RMA, and any applicable adjustments. So that would be beginning farmer, native sod, conservation compliance. All of those elements are things that are part of the basic provisions and offered to you in Pennsylvania, and things that I really encourage you to discuss with your agent. So here's our calcs. Liability times premium rate gives you your total premium. That total premium times the discount percent gives you a premium discount. Your producer premium is the total premium minus the discount premium, plus or minus any adjustments if those are applicable. So let's do our math with our examples. Base coverage. Here's our elements, including a final premium rate and the discount percentage. We do our math, and ultimately we end up for the base coverage with $35,684 of producer premium. Now you can see that's quite a difference from the gross of $79,297. If you recall us talking about conservation compliance and the requirement to be compliant with that program in order to retain your premium discount, you can see the difference in what you would pay if you were not compliant. And then we have to calculate out our certified seed. Our elements at the top and our calc at the bottom for a final certified seed endorsement premium of $3,861. Now we simply add them all together and end up with a total producer premium of $39,545. Losses. Here's where the details really come in, and having good records matters significantly. Covered losses generally have all of the elements that are shown on the screen here. These causes are fairly ubiquitous throughout most APH or revenue policies. The coverage is always going to be against unavoidable and generally naturally occurring events. Only in the case of crop provisions or special provisions are other types of events potentially added in, or in some cases removed. So let's talk about what's not allowed. So not allowed for potatoes in Pennsylvania: loss of production due to damage that occurs or becomes evident after the end of the insurance period, including but not limited to damage that occurs or becomes evident in storage, unless, as we discussed, you have that storage endorsement. You may be still eligible for damage that becomes evident during storage because it's extending that discovery period. Also not insured: causes such as freeze after certain dates if they're limited by the special provisions of insurance. So this is where it's very important, again, check those special provisions. And also knowing about a disease or insect infestation and failing to apply proper management. That means that you did not comply with the good farming practice provisions that are part of every crop insurance policy. Other perils could be included or excluded if you elect one of the potato endorsements. I'll give you one example. Under the certified seed endorsement, loss on potatoes because the crop did not qualify as certified seed due to mixing varieties or failing to meet the certified seed program requirements, that's considered uninsurable. So that's one example of where an endorsement might add additional elements to your insured or uninsured causes. Preventive planting. We talked a little bit about the additional percentage that we could add on. Preventive planting provides protection in the event that you can't plant your insured crop by the final planting date, or, as we saw for potatoes in our date chart, by the final day of the late planting period. When adverse weather prevents planting, a PP payment is made to compensate for the costs that are generally incurred in prep for planting the crop. You can see a calculation example on the slide as well. And the preventive planting factor is going to vary by crop. We talked about potatoes being 45%, as is shown in the example, and then having the additional 5% as an optional add-on. Quality adjustment. This is a simple breakdown of what we covered in a little bit of detail with the quality endorsement and processing quality endorsement, but specifically, production is eligible for quality adjustment if the potatoes have freeze damage or tuber rot evident at or before the end of the insurance period, and this is from the crop provisions. So you have this coverage even without one of the quality endorsements. Also, grade inspection must be completed no more than 21 days after the end of insurance. We've talked a little about the endorsements, but it's very important that you do review these carefully if the quality endorsements are something you want, or just the quality adjustment process in the crop provisions. It's a little more complex in this program versus those that don't have a quality adjustment. And it's important to clearly understand the alternative processes and the records you might need and the process that your adjuster is going to go through. So what do you need to do? If you think you have a loss, you need to report it to your agent within 72 hours of your initial discovery of damage, but not later than 15 days after the end of the insurance period, even if you have not harvested the crop. You need to protect the crop from further damage by providing sufficient care. You need to provide necessary document to your adjuster so your adjuster can correctly complete that loss. You need to let the adjuster access fields and perform grade inspections. And finally, as instructed by the adjuster, you need to leave representative samples intact for each field of a damaged unit. Sample strips for potatoes, according to the crop provisions, need to be a minimum of 10 feet wide and the length of each field in the unit. So what's your adjuster going to do? Well, your company's loss adjuster will settle the claim. They'll determine the loss on a unit basis, settle the claim. They're going to use RMA issued loss adjustment procedures for northern potatoes to determine your loss. They're going to contact you very shortly after the company receives your loss. And your adjuster is going to do a number of different things. They're going to set up the appointment to visit your farm and inspect the damaged acreage. They'll take samples, plant counts as appropriate from different parts of the field to determine the amount of damage and the cause of damage. They're going to consider different factors based on the crop and the stage of growth in determining that damage. They will identify any disease, consider good farming practices, and perform quality adjustments as needed. That will include grade inspections for potatoes if they do quality adjustment. They'll take photos of the damage, often with a ruler or other measurable object in the picture for scale. They also might have you in the picture as a measure of scale, as well as perhaps holding up a sign showing the date and the field location. That adjuster will determine the causes of loss, how many acres are damaged by each, defer loss adjustment if it's appropriate per the loss adjustment procedures and the stage of your crop, and revisit and reinspect after a deferral period. The adjuster is going to complete all the necessary paperwork for your loss and will explain what he or she did and the findings and walk you through that adjustment worksheet so you understand how they came to their conclusion. And provided you and the adjuster agree, you and the adjuster will sign all the documents in agreement of the loss adjustment findings. Then, through the crop insurance company, the adjuster will make sure that you are issued any indemnity or prevented planting payment that's due to you. And that's going to be within 30 days of the later of the loss adjustment completion or any arbitration or reconsideration or final judgment agreement. And the company, most likely, or the adjuster, one or the other, will notify you if for some reason your loss can't be paid within this time frame. Let's do an indemnity. This is going to build on our example from the guarantee, liability, and premium. Here are elements: acres, total protection guarantee. This is going to have harvested and unharvested here would be determined separately and then summed up if necessary. And that's detailed out in your crop provisions in the loss portion. You'll have a price. We use the share of the crop, and we use the production to count. Now, what's production to count? The production to count includes all of the following on the potato unit. So all harvested and appraised, whether harvested or unharvested due to insurable or uninsurable causes, all of that production from the insurable acres on the unit. So that all totaled up for your unit is the production to count. Here's our calculation. If we had types, which we do not, but if we did, and that could change in future actuarial documents, then we would do these steps by type, and we would total up. Here, we would do some of the math by harvested and unharvested, as is called out under the elements, and would total up. Today, for our example, we're doing this very simply, and we're going to have a sample scenario with only harvested production. It's all harvested on the unit, and we have 100% share in 160 acres of potatoes. None are certified seed. In this example, remember earlier we were using certified seed. We're taking our certified seed out of our example today. And we have 31,200 hundredweight total production guarantee for the unit. We have a $12.85 price per hundredweight. And we harvested 29,820 hundredweight on the unit. So now we do our math, and you can see the example calculation with the translated values in the calculation box to its left. We do our math with the total production guarantee times our price to come up with our $400,920 value of guarantee. We take our harvested production times our price, and we end up with $383,187 value of the production to count. We subtract the production count from the guarantee, and we get a gross loss of $17,733. That times our 100% share means our indemnity payment for this unit is $17,733. We're going to sum up now. That was a lot of information about potatoes, and I hope that if you are a potato producer or if you know potato producers, this has piqued your interest in going and reading more and talking with your agent. It's important to talk with your agent about details and current year pricing and coverage options, and review quotes to determine what best fits your risk management needs. Here's some quick reminders about what we covered today. So the Northern Potato Policy is what's applicable in Pennsylvania, and it covers potatoes grown for harvest as certified seed stock for the following year's crop or for human consumption, processed or whole. The insured potatoes are planted with certified seed potatoes. There's 4 optional endorsements specific to potatoes. There's a storage coverage, quality, processing quality, which requires a contract, and a certified seed endorsement. And as with all crops, please ensure that you maintain detailed records and are ready to share all those records as appropriate with your loss adjuster so that your loss adjuster can properly complete your claim. Those might be harvest and sales documents, expenses for replanting reimbursements if that becomes an eligible element in Pennsylvania, could be a contract if applicable, proof of certification under the certified seed program, etc. With that, I want to thank you for being with us for this potato webinar. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your feedback. We'll be sending out a survey. And as always, we encourage you to look into crop insurance further to make sure that you understand the tenets, work with your crop insurance agent, and we hope that you will join us for a future webinar.